Hello, everyone. This is Sandy Joy from Beneath the Silence, Healing the Wounds of Betrayal Trauma. This is part 2 of episode 5 on complex trauma. So today what I'm going to talk about is Dr. Omar Minwalla's work. That's what this part is geared for, specifically the 13 dimensions of trauma. But I'm going to mention a couple of other things as well that I think are important because again, they're parallel resource relational across the spectrum of how we feel when we experience betrayal trauma that leads to that complex trauma. Okay. So I've mentioned before, Dr. Omar Minwalla founded the Institute of Sexual Health in California. And his specialty is betrayal trauma, but specifically to the perpetrators that have sexual compulsivity, pornography, sex addiction, those kinds of things. I'll get into that a little bit more. But with Dr. Omar Minwalla's multiple studies, he has purported the following 13 dimensions of trauma. And I think it's very important that we understand these 13 dimensions, okay? Although, again, Minwalla's research and his studies focus on the trauma that partners of people with sex addiction and or compulsions, such as pornography addiction, experience, most of those dimensions perpetuate through and across the board for betrayal trauma. And that's why I'm bringing them up here, because not only does it help partners of people who have pornography or ex-partners of people who have pornography or sex addiction, but the article can be deemed a parallel resource. Okay, so the first dimension is discovery trauma. Now, discovery trauma, I liken it to, it's called D-Day. It is, so on the D-Day, this is the day that the betrayal was realized. And that could even mean that betrayal blindness dissipated. It can mean that you found out something, an email came through, um, you know, a text, just something that, or you found something as you're, innocently on the computer and something popped up. Okay. D-Day can be, any of those things, but including in the workplace, right? So discovery is classified as a critical traumatic incident or event. Now, if you're in the workplace and you see wrongdoing happening, that's a critical event. Okay. Or there's something that's being processed that could harm the end user. That's a critical event. It may not seem like your life is in danger, but finding out, through an email that your partner is having an affair or affairs may not seem like, your life is in danger, but it's still a critical event. And why? Because of that relationship. So whether in the workplace or in an intimate partner relationship, or as a parent or from a coach or whatever the case may be, there's a critical traumatic incident or event that has started. Okay, that's D-Day. The next one, the second dimension is disclosure trauma. And disclosure trauma can be in two parts. That can be hearing disclosure from the perpetrator or your partner who is the perpetrator of the betrayal. And you're finding more information. And when disclosure happens, it may not happen all at once. You may get a little piece here, and a few days later, or a few months later, or a year later, more pieces. I call that the trickle effect. And every time we hear more information, you get more information, it sends you right back in another critical event. Takes you right back into that dark hole of betrayal, and it's added betrayal. So if you are someone who has been the perpetrator of betrayal and you're watching this podcast, Do a full disclosure, but do it please with therapists because it can be so incredibly damaging and harmful to the recipient, especially. Okay, that betrayal trauma so much. Um, so it's like the betrayal is happening over and over at a deeper level each and every time. Okay. The third dimension is the reality ego fragmentation. And what this is, it's the inner relationship we have with ourselves. So remember, we internalize, okay? This relationship is between our perceived reality, what we thought was real, and the traumatized ego, what now we now realize is real. And I've had, I said this myself, but I've had many survivors that I have helped over the years, the last probably 5 years that I started helping people. I did 4 years of my own healing journey before I would even start working with anyone else. Okay. Um, anyway, was that I believed that my husband of over 30 years, the person standing in front of me was dead. He had died. And that's what other survivors, how they feel, is that that person is dead. Because who's standing in front of me? I don't know them. They're a stranger. And so there's grief. The trauma, the reality, the traumatic reality is so different from what the reality was previous. Okay, so the fragmentation. So we go into the ego now goes into conflict because it's fragmented and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of turmoil. And that's why it hurts so much if we go to a friend and say, I found out my partner's having affairs. And the friend says, well, what are you still there for? Kick him to the curb, move on. And how that's more betrayal trauma is because our brain is traumatized. It can't make a decision to say, we can't make a decision to save our life. And this was one thing that my therapist said to me, and I've passed this on to my clients or to anyone that I'm speaking with, is that you don't have to make a decision about to stay or to go. Your body will know when the time is right. So any therapy that you're doing shouldn't be about staying or going because you will know when it's right for you. It's the only decision you need to make today is no decision. The only decision you need to make today is no decision regarding staying or going. And I've had people go, well, how will I know? And it's different for everyone. It's just as unique as you are. So you may not know. Well, I can't tell you how you will know, but what I can promise you is you will know. You will know when it's right for you. It doesn't mean there's not going to be fear or pain if you choose to stay, or fear or pain if you choose to leave. There's going to be that either way. That I can promise you because it's still going to be the unknown. It's what you're going to be listening to your gut instinct. That's what you're going to pay attention to for what's right for you. Okay. So, as the ego is the conscious mediator between the psyche and reality, one's reality becomes fragmented. We no longer know what is real and what isn't. Survivors have a difficult time believing one's own narrative. Did that really happen? Did I dream this? Did I have a nightmare? And if there's, that grooming, that manipulation, the gaslighting, that will be if the perpetrator doesn't want to face it, that will be full force. That will be on full force. Like, you're crazy. No, that didn't happen. You're reading too much into it. You're too sensitive. You're not too sensitive. You're not reading too much into it. It's how your body is feeling because your body knows. And believe your body. Believe your body. That's what's important. Okay. The fourth one is impact to body and medical intersection. So, physical issues abound within the body of the partner due to sex addiction induced trauma. But again, this can be, like I said, this is a parallel resource. So it can be finding out that your partner's been gambling or financial abuse, spending a lot of money in other areas, um, leading a secret life, a double life in whatever way, whatever way that is. This may include, okay, so now we look because we internalize. So this may include when we have body and medical intersection, body difference in body image, body dysmorphia, triggering and worsening of eating disorders, weight loss or weight gain, and that's because we're not eating or we're eating, you know, things that may be more unhealthy or eating more of it, trying to that emotional eating, trying to cope, vomiting, shaking, hair loss, sleep disturbances, emotional dysregulation. So I talked about that earlier in part one. Dissociation, that will come up again and again and again. And I'll talk about that in blindness a little more. Physical expressions of rage. I'm going to come back to that. Okay. Hypervigilance, muscular issues, aversion to physical or sexual touch. Stay away. Like, where have you been? Who have you touched? What are you doing? Okay. Physical pain and uncontrollable primal screams. So I'm going to address the primal screams. Scream into a pillow. If you don't want, if you have children at home, whether they're adult or younger, scream into a pillow. If you can go into, an area where you can be by yourself, a rage room, a forest that, you're right, scream it out. But at home, scream into a pillow. It helps. It's getting that pain out. Doesn't mean you're not going to still have pain. It's just going to lessen for a time. And then you may need to scream again. That physical expressions of rage, you may find that you just want to punch a hole in the wall. You just want to smack the shit out of your partner. And it's, please don't do that. Please don't do that. It's hit a punching bag. Go to the gym. Make sure you wear gloves. I'm telling you because I punched a punching bag without anything and I've still have the scars because I needed to get that rage out. Okay. And I thank my son for bringing me the punching bag because I did hit, punched in the chest my husband when he disrespected me and came through a locked door when I was changing. And I lost it. I lost it because I just felt I had zero control and that rage came out. And it was my son who screamed, "Mom," which got me out of that rage. And he goes, "Come with me." And he took me down. I had been in the bedroom changing. He took me down to the kitchen. He went down to the basement and got his punching bag and he brought it up and he held it. Well, I punched the shit out of it. And as blood is running down my hand, he's going, "Mom, do you want to stop?" "No." "Okay." And he just held it while I punched it. A rage room is safer. You get geared up. You can break things. You can throw paint. You can throw things against a wall. If I hadn't gotten ill, one day I so wanted a rage room because it is so therapeutic. And you may not, I was never a violent person, never a violent person. And what happened to me was like, I'm a monster. Who is this person? I don't even know who I am. Okay. So medical conditions Moving on to the medical intersection, medical conditions may worsen, and this is why it's important for medical professionals, such as doctors and nurses, to be aware of the experiences of people who are dealing with betrayal trauma. Okay, not just the sex addiction induced trauma, but betrayal trauma. The next is the fifth one is external crises and destabilization. So, in addition to betrayal trauma, we have external crises. If you have young children at home, you have a hard, like hard to look after yourself. How do you look after your children? So, external crises may, how do I look after my kids? Who do I get? Sleeping arrangements, financial issues, looking after, like I said, childcare, moving, or the impact of the family system as a whole may be severely affected. Medical and psychosomatic conditions are much more likely to occur. I lessen the psychosomatic symptoms. Well, they can be there. Those are your body's way of telling you something is wrong and you need to take a break. Okay. But we try to keep doing our say, you have to go to the job because we have to earn money, have to feed the kids, have to keep a roof over our head, whatever that looks like. And and it can be hard. The sixth is sex addiction induced trauma, hypervigilance and re-experiencing. But again, this could be any addiction induced trauma or just betrayal induced trauma. Okay. That this includes being obsessed with what the perpetrator is doing, where they're going, who they're talking to, what or whom they may be talking to, texting to, seeing. This obsession is about hypervigilance, and it's all about safety. You're looking for safety, and that's not obsession. That is looking for safety. Okay, you're looking because you don't feel safe in any way, shape, and form around the perpetrator, or even in your own home if things were happening in your home. And you know, this re-experiencing as well that happens is not sleeping because of nightmares. We may have flashbacks, triggers. Heck, I went to watch Big Bang Theory and they started talking about one of the people having an affair. That did me in. I couldn't watch Big Bang Theory for a couple of years, and I loved it. Okay, couldn't watch it for a couple of years. Family Feud, one of the questions was about infidelity, and that did me in. I couldn't watch Family Feud. I can now, and I'm not triggered because I know I'm safe and I'm safe in my body, and I can tell myself I'm safe. But back then, I couldn't do those are re-experiencing. And it just seemed to be everywhere. So you may find that in songs that you used to enjoy, in movies, etc., that this comes up. Know that they're there and to be able to tell yourself you're safe. You're safe in the moment. And it's okay to switch the station or watch something else or turn it off, whatever you need to do. Okay. The seventh is dynamics of perpetration, violation, and abuse. And when the trauma that occurs due to the betrayal, as professionals in the helping field or as survivors, friends of survivors, we tend to focus on the physical aspect of the often abusive trauma. And if there's betrayal trauma, there's abuse. Psychological, and it could be, I don't want to say just because there's no just about it when it's psychological. That's the grooming, manipulation, gaslighting. Okay. It is psychological abuse is always there in betrayal trauma, but there can be sexual abuse. There can be financial abuse. There can be, in the case of, actually, I'm going to get down to that in the next one for the sexual trauma. Okay. So remember that the psychological and emotional abuse is always there. So that is part of the violation and abuse. And the form of betrayal trauma always has abuse. There's always abuse that comes over days, weeks, months, and often years. And that is, like I said, the deceit, manipulation, gaslighting. The impact of these deep-seated patterns, however, of this psychological manipulation over time is a slow dissolution of an individual's connection between our own psyche, the survivor's psyche, and our intuition. Okay. It's a dissolution, so a disconnect. That's why working with individuals and or in your own work is self-trust must be one of the first things that you're working on. Okay, learning to trust yourself again. We make hundreds of decisions every day. Do I get out of bed or not? Do I brush my teeth or not? Do I shower or not? Do I comb my hair or not? You're making a decision. We just sometimes go by habit and do those things, but there's still decisions, regardless if they're a habit or not. It's those harder decisions. What do I make for dinner? That you may have difficulty with. Okay. Self-trust. All right. The eighth one is sexual trauma. And an individual's sexuality may be severely jeopardized by the deep-seated traumatic patterns that exist due to the continuation of traumatic incidences. So this is related to having the perpetrator having a porn or sex addiction. But again, who am I as a partner? And that can affect our sexuality. Okay. So continuing structures of sexual and gender domination. Okay. So it may be physical abuse. It may be psychological abuse that's happening, but have domination. We can question our sexuality. It's so continuing structures of sexual and gender domination, control, utilization, and violation of the survivor's body and sexuality may exist within intimate relationships impacted by addiction, whether that's sexual addiction, pornography addiction, or compulsivity disorders, gambling, drugs, alcohol, etc. Often, perpetrators who have a pornography addiction, listen to this one, okay, will do one of two things. They will withdraw sexually from their partner. They will, because the majority is males, well, the addiction doesn't mean females can't have a porn addiction. They can. Males have a harder time, no pun intended, getting an erection, keeping an erection, because an intimate relationship is not about dopamine hit, whereas pornography is about a dopamine hit, different hormone. An intimate relationship is oxytocin. It's the love hormone, and it's a deep connecting hormone that doesn't exist in pornography. Pornography, there is no emotion, there's no vulnerability, there is no intimacy, and there is 100% control. Okay? In an intimate relationship, not only is there no dopamine, but there's shared control. There is supposed to be intimacy. There is vulnerability. And that can have an impact on whether the person with the porn addiction is able to get an erection. Okay. And if they can't get an erection, they withdraw. They can masturbate because they're masturbating to the pornography. They can get an erection to the pornography. And I'm not going to get into what pornography is. That's a whole other thing. But I will say it is violence against women, hands down, 100%. Okay? So there's that. Or the second, they recreate with their intimate partner. The perpetrator recreates with their intimate partner what they have been viewing, okay, in their sexual situations. And however, that as pornography is often abusive, the sexual acts with the partner are also often abusive. Okay. This can happen for children too, who have been sexually traumatized. And actually, what Minwala from 2013 states um, is that symptoms of sexual trauma are very similar to that of women who have been raped or sexually assaulted. And sexual trauma always exists for children who have been sexually abused. Okay. Um, the ninth one is gender wounds and gender-based trauma. So, gender-based violence is a factor in maintaining a subservientness, which is used as a mandate of repression. So, as we have talked about in previous episodes, that a higher percentage of girls and women experience a high level of betrayal trauma versus boys or men. It's a low level. Doesn't mean they can't experience betrayal trauma, but it's a low level of betrayal trauma. Okay. So the 10th one is relational trauma and attachment injuries. Now, I'm going to get into attachment a little bit in future episodes. So I'm going to just keep this short to the point. So when a person disconnects from someone who is no longer safe for them, it often results in physical and emotional pain, dysregulation, and a higher chance of disorders and disease occurring. Okay. The 11th is family, communal, and social injustices or injuries. Sorry, not injustices. Well, they are injustices as well. Um, Although trauma impacts the inner world of the survivor and creates attachment wounds, betrayal trauma also has extensive impacts on other relationships. These relationships exist within the parent-child connection, even if the child is an adult. Okay. With friends and extended family, one's experiences in public, and their sense of community, as all stabilization is fragmented. Often, survivors withdraw from those things they used to enjoy, and that includes activities and people they would normally spend time with. Best friends, going for coffee. You know, these injuries cause significant grief and oh, so much loss. Okay? No one and no place feels safe and secure. And inside, there is this burning. So let's say you volunteer somewhere and you go to your volunteer placement and you want to keep busy, but it's not as busy. Inside, it's this stuff that's wanting to come out, and it's like, I can't, because of that internalization, that shame, that guilt, and often the loyalty to the perpetrator. Okay. Remember that internalization is prominent in betrayal trauma, and survivors often believe they must have done something wrong to cause the betrayal to happen. It's our brain's way of trying to make sense of something that's nonsensical. This internalization includes copious amounts of shame and humiliation, and the impact is withdrawal from most, if not all, forms of engagement. Okay. Um, The 12th then is trauma induced or treatment induced trauma. So this can be from medical professionals, from therapists, from naturopathic doctors, etc. This is medical and mental health intervention, which causes more harm or a similar injury, so more betrayal trauma, to the individual survivor, and further traumatic consequences ensue. So, when an individual reaches out for help and they're told what their partner is doing is normal and that she should learn to like it, is betrayal trauma. For example, all guys watch porn. Bullshit. They do not. Okay, is betrayal trauma. When an individual is hurt instead of helped, including misdiagnosis, labeling, shamed or blamed. For example, aren't you as codependent as hell? This is further betrayal trauma. Historically, the treatment model for sex addiction promotes codependency. So this is Patrick Carnes' work. Okay, he promotes codependency and co-sex addiction as a primary diagnosis, and this coincides with the identical perpetration of the sex addict. This is further betrayal trauma. If you are a partner of somebody with a porn or sex addiction, I invite you to read the works of Dr. Jill Manning or Dr. Paula Hall. She's got a handbook out, Dr. Paula Hall, that is absolutely fabulous. And when I was reading it, I kept saying, "Get out of my head, get out of my head, get out of my head," because I literally thought she knew, even though I'm reading her book, that she knew everything I was experiencing. Okay. Dr. Patrick Carn's books made me feel horrible. Further betrayal. All of this and oh so much more create treatment-induced trauma. So we must educate ourselves. That's part of our advocacy for self, but also demand this of your therapist, demand this of your doctors, that they educate themselves on what this looks like. Okay. They can learn that through my course, not to sell my course to your doctor, but hey, why not? Um, it's for gaining knowledge and leave our own, as professionals, we have to leave our own biases and our beliefs at the door and shut the damn door. Not just leave it at the door, shut the door. To do anything less is to cause tremendous harm to the survivors. Okay? And the last one, number 13, is existential and spiritual trauma. So for many people, a connection with the universe, humanity, God, or other deity is crucial for one's feeling of being. When an individual experiences betrayal trauma in one form or another, and they often question their sense of life and being in this world. Okay, they often question that. The connection is often severely destabilized, and trust in any form or belief is shaken and shattered. How could God do this to me? I must be a really bad person. Okay. The very foundation of their faith and belief system can collapse deep within their soul. Okay. So I know we're getting really close to time being up, but I just want to talk about um, what is called the secret sexual basement, just very quickly. And again, Dr. Minwala coined this term. And what is meant by this term is that the perpetrator has created a secret part of themselves that the survivor knows nothing about. Nothing about. It's a whole other world unbeknown to the partner, unbeknown to the survivor. Okay. So we can change out. So as again, this is transferable to all addictions or other betrayal trauma. So we can take out the secret or the sexual part and use any other form of addiction, keeping in mind that some addictions are much more noticeable than others, smelling alcohol or, somebody's taking drugs, we can sometimes tell in their eyes and their behavior. We can also replace sexual with various forms of abuse, such as secret financial abuse, or a financial basement, secret psychological basement. These forms of abuse may not be readily known to the partner or survivor, but damaging nonetheless. Okay, so there is that component. I may do a podcast on integrity abuse disorder, but you can look that up, and that's also Dr. Minwala. But as again, we're getting close to, I don't even know how much time it has been, but I just want to say the impact, again, very shortly, of complex trauma. Okay. The indicators are ongoing, and the damages changes in the ways of our feelings. So I'm just recapping what for part one, feelings and how a survivor manages their feelings. It's distortion of one's worldview, alterations in thoughts and ways of to manage. It's sometimes the absence of the thought. I can't think. I have nothing. I'm numb. It's our ideas and consciousness, or absence of consciousness is dissociation. And that's a way that we try to protect ourselves. How one views themselves, their self-awareness, their self-worth, tanks in the gutter I must be a horrible person. I don't offer anything. If I was only better, he wouldn't have done all these things. Okay. How one makes sense in their mind and at a soul level. So that's the internalization and thinking it's my fault or part of this is my fault. It has to be because how else, how could somebody do this to me? So think of even a child experiencing betrayal, how one interacts with and relates to other people. So that's our relationships, as through emotional connections to these people and how these connections function. Perceptions of the perpetrator and abuse, like who is that person? Like they wouldn't lie to me. So we can go into blindness and which is unconscious. It's or that person is dead. The person I fell in love with, the person I was married to or have been with for decades has died. Because that person standing in front of me, I don't know who they are. They're a stranger. That can be a boss, the boss that I've always trusted, felt safe with. You're a whistleblower, and now they're blaming you. It's like, who are they? Who have I been working for, working with? Maybe it's a colleague. The impact also, it's heightened, it is heightened for survivors. Complex trauma heightens everything we feel. And it's compounded by the generational models of risk and dysfunction and that transact with organizational and institutional aggression and marginalized, especially those from diverse and oppressed communities in society. Remember, it's a deeper level. Um, and the last is that it causes moral injury. And what moral injury is, this is from Norman and Megwin from 2024. It's the distressing psychological, behavior, social, and sometimes spiritual aftermath of exposure to traumatic events in response to acting or witnessing behaviors that go against an individual's values or moral beliefs. This is moral injury may exist in response to a disturbing event or events in which one's profoundly kept morals or values are debased in some way. This can lead to, as Norman and Megwin said, PTSD, but I will say complex trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Okay. But always at the forefront is that guilt, shame, anger, and of course, from betrayal is there. The hallmark of moral injury is the inability to self-forgive, that one does not deserve to be successful or have healthy relationships. And that keeps us in patterns of choosing people who harm us. It's important to do your healing work and to learn to self-like. That will then be self-love. Okay. I want to thank you for joining me for part 2 of episode 5 on complex trauma. And I know this one was really heavy to listen to all those trauma things. So I thank you for um, bearing with me and staying with me for those. And remember that healing is possible. Beneath the silence, healing the wounds of betrayal trauma. So for more resources, you can go to my website, sandrajoy.ca. And I thank you. I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing the podcast. And I thank you for subscribing. It helps the algorithms and for more people to notice them so they too can be helped. So until next time, okay, please take gentle care of yourself. That's what you deserve. And remember, I see you, I hear you, and I believe you. Thank you.